UFC Vegas 37, aka UFC Fight Night, Spann versus Smith. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video by yours truly here at Boxingmmapicks, where we're giving you our fight by fight breakdown, fight by fight analysis, specifically from the betting perspective, letting you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you want to avoid, perhaps which underdog has the best shot at winning. And if you stick around to the end of the video, you may even get a little bit of parlay action as well. Very busy card this week. We have 15 fights, so in a lot of ways, we are going to get right to it. We're going to skip the small talk, but I will say subscribe to the channel, like, comment, participate in the comments. We always appreciate that, and we always appreciate a good conversation there. Like I said, 15 fights on this card. We have 9 fights on the prelims, so we are going to get right to it. Starting with fight number 1, Emily Whitmire taking on Hannah Goldy. And I'll start this fight by talking about Emily Whitmire. 2-fight losing streak dating back to August 2020. She's had 3 canceled fights in 2021, but she is finally here now. Primarily a striker, I would say, a bit of a switch stance style to her stand-up. She moves pretty well around the ring, decent jab, decent 1-2 combination, decent high kick. I've seen her use push kicks as well to keep distance. Doesn't really have diversity in her combinations, though, so look for her to do a lot of the same things. A bit of a ground game with Whitmire as well. I've seen her land takedowns. She does have some grappling from what I've seen. Top control's decent as well, although stronger grapplers have definitely shown to have an effective defensive guard against her, so I wouldn't necessarily call her a ground threat. She is facing an opponent in Hannah Goldy, who is probably going to keep the fight standing as well. Hannah Goldy did lose just 2 months ago to Diana Belbita. She's on a 2-fight losing streak as well, so somebody is definitely looking to get back in the win column in this fight. Pretty balanced and pretty patient striker, a lot of leg kicks, especially with that lead leg. Has some good pop with her right hook. Fights from the outside, fights at a distance. She is going to be the shorter fighter more times than not. We see her with only a 1-inch disadvantage in height this time around. But she will also set up some decent combinations. Ultimately, I don't think Whitmire has the best striking defense. She is only 5'5", but I feel like she stands tall. I wonder if that height measurement is even accurate. She might be a little bit taller than that. She doesn't really cover up well, in my opinion. And I think Goldy will have the chance to be the more active striker in this fight. We see here the significant strikes landed per minute, a big discrepancy in the rate between these two fighters. She is the more accurate striker as well. And I don't think the ground game is going to be a factor here on either side. Definitely not placing a bet on this one. I think this could be a split decision type of fight. But for Hannah Goldy to get right back in the ring only 8 weeks since her last fight, I think she likes this matchup. I think she gets the job done. And I think Hannah Goldy is going to get back in the win column. So Hannah Goldy is my pick, minus 125. Not too mad at that.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. This is one of those fights that you want no part of. Out of Hannah Goldy, she's really fit. She's really in shape. She's a strong fighter. She doesn't really utilize that strength. She doesn't really clinch with fighters, take them down. Like you said, she wants to keep us on the feet. To me, a lot of her fights look like sparring matches, so I'm not sure if she is ready for the UFC level. The same can be said for Emily Whitmire. I don't think she's UFC level at all either. She's very upright. She's pretty basic, but she's effective with her 1-2s. She has some kicks. She's pretty decent. She has a decent game, but she's not really good anywhere. So it makes me want to pick Hannah Goldy. But the concern with Hannah Goldy is, for me, she only has 1 win on her record versus Callie Robbins on the Contender Series, who was 6-2 at the time. And Callie Robbins is not a good fighter. Her 6 wins and 2 losses. Her wins were against a lot of newcomers, a lot of scrubs. So her record is kind of padded. And aside from that fight, Hannah Goldy has no wins against any fighter with more than 2 wins. She lost to Miranda Granger, Diana Belbita. Now, Whitmire is not like those fighters, but one thing, she does have that height. I think she's more than 1 inch taller. I'm not sure. We're going to find out fight night. But I think she has that reach. And I think that's something that, even though I think Hannah Goldy could easily win this fight, I'm going to go with Whitmire. I think that her 1-2s, her basic jabs is good enough to beat Hannah Goldy. This is going to be a sloppy fight. Like, this is going to be a fight that can go either way. It's going to be depending on the judges. It should go to, it's definitely going decision. But I'm going to go Emily Whitmire here to pull this off. She actually beat a UFC fighter or two. And she's not good, but she actually won a fight in the UFC at this level. So I'm going to go Emily Whitmire to get this done.
Moving on to fight number 2. In that case, we have Gustavo Lopez taking on Heili Alateng. I'll break this one down as well. Gustavo Lopez, he lost to Adrian Yanez back in March. Pretty good switch stance fighter, good stand-up overall. Pretty sharp, tight boxing, good in and out movement. Definitely has some pop as well. Uses a lot of fakes and feints to get his opponents to bite. And I think he has pretty good striking diversity. You know, he'll definitely mix in the kicks as well. He can take you down. He can do some work on the ground when needed. We saw that in his fight versus Anthony Burchak, for example. You know, nothing crazy, but he does land one takedown per fight at 50% accuracy. So that is something to take note of. Also had some really good ground and pound moments in that fight as well. So I'm curious to see if he can use that to his advantage. In the Yanez fight, he also had some moments on the feet. So again, pretty decent overall fighter. No glaring weakness in his game per se. For Alateng Heili, he lost to Casey Kenny for a unanimous decision. That was back in October 2020. Solid overall fighter, pretty dynamic striker, really comfortable on the feet. Hands are pretty quick, has some counter punching ability as well. Fights off the back foot quite a bit. Doesn't cover the body kick that well. I mean, we saw what Casey Kenny was doing in that fight. Obviously, Casey Kenny is a different level of fighter, but nonetheless, Casey Kenny was having his way with Alateng on the feet. And he did it with constant pressure, constant coming forward, great usage of kicks, and making Alateng Heili fight off of the back foot. Even Benoit versus Alateng had a similar script for moments in that fight. So I think with Heili Alateng, there is sort of a blueprint to beating him. I think with Alateng, you're getting a little bit more toughness than talent per se. And I think between these two fighters, Gustavo Lopez is probably the more skilled fighter. So, I mean, toughness could win, but with this type of matchup that I think is staying on the feet, I do want to go with the fighter that I feel is more skilled. And that fighter is Gustavo Lopez. Another close fight. We can see it in the odds. That's going to be something that is a theme throughout this entire card. But Gustavo Lopez is going to be my pick at the slight underdog at plus 105.
Oh, that's fair, man. This is a close fight. I was going back and forth on this fight. I'll make this one quick. I'm going Heili Alateng. The reason being, I think he's going to be the better wrestler in this fight. He's actually a wrestler first, and then obviously fell in love with his grappling. You don't really see a lot of wrestlers coming out of China, but he's actually a wrestler first. And I think that's going to help him in this fight here. And I think on the feet, he can hold his own. I think he's going to have... I think Lopez is open for a lot of strikes, especially counters. And one thing, Heili Alateng has good counters. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alateng catches them on a counter. But I think he's going to win this fight. I think he can more than hold his own in the stand-up. He may have the better striking, but I think he has the better wrestling here. And he's also fought the better guys, right? So I'm going to go Heili Alateng here to get this one done in a very close fight.
Not mad at that. Again, a lot of close fights on this card. So you are going to see us going on different sides, possibly for quite a few more fights. So let's move on to fight number 3. We have another close one, Impa Kasanganai at minus 120, taking on Carlston Harris at plus 100. I'll break this one down as well. Impa Kasanganai, he beat Sasha Palatnikov via second round rear naked choke. That was back in April. He's a pretty big welterweight. I mean, we know that he competed at middleweight for his first few UFC fights, but this is now several fights at welterweight, or I believe a second fight at welterweight, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely looked improved as a striker in his last fight. I thought that prior to that fight, I considered him a little green in his striking, but he definitely looked improved. Good patience, covers up with the hands, tries to use an active jab, has a big right hand. Doesn't really overthrow it, just has that sort of natural power to his game. Showed in his last fight that he can land some takedowns as well. I mean, it could be the opponent that he was facing in Sasha Palatnikov, but nonetheless, he did show his ability to land a takedown. And he's ultimately a fighter who is significantly improving fight by fight. So in some ways, you don't really know what you're going to get from him until the day of the fight, until you're watching it live. For Carlston Harris, on the other hand, he had a successful UFC debut, beating Christian Aguilera via anaconda choke. That was back in May. I've seen some relentless sort of grapple clinch wrestling out of him. That seems to be his style, that he'll just go for it. Uses his long frame to his advantage. To control on the cage, to land trips, to drag his opponent to the ground, etc. He'll use that body lock all fight. He'll make it really relentless in his approach. And the hands are good. I mean, the hands are pretty decent. His stand up, he does have stand up. He has some kicks, even has some pop in his punches. But realistically, he's going to pressure in the stand up until he can try to get this on the ground and try to look to dominate on the ground. Very tough matchup to call. A few questions that I ask myself: does Harris dominate with grappling and takedowns? Is Kasanganay that improved with the ground game, the way that he showed versus Platnikov, and going to completely nullify Harris's main advantage? Does Kasanganay land on the feet? Again, he has that natural power. Does he land on the feet? Does Harris potentially land on the feet? Because again, he does have some pop in his punches as well. So a lot of question marks in this fight. And again, like I said, Kasanganay improving significantly fight over fight. So in a lot of ways, you don't know what you'll get. I think that's why we see him here as the favorite as at minus 120. But my pick will actually be for Carlston Harris. And it is based on him being the more proven talent, him being a specialist with the grappling, whereas I don't feel like Impa is a specialist anywhere per se, while still possessing good ability on the feet on the side of Harris. But again, don't be surprised if Kasanganay wins this. I'm definitely not betting on this one. I understand why he's the favorite, but my pick will be Carlston Harris at plus 100.
Oh, that's fair, man. You got to look at this fight. Whereas Carlston Harris, he's definitely a grappling specialist, and he can get this fight to the mat, and he has a big advantage on the ground. So it's a tough fight because if he gets his way, he can make it look easy in there against Impa Kasanganay. But I'm going with my boy Impa Kasanganay. I'll explain. I think that he's gonna be able to stuff some of these takedowns. I think he has good cardio. Carlston Harris has not gone to decision since 2017. So he hasn't gone to decision in a long time. And his style of fighting is if he doesn't get you out of there in the first round, at the age of 34, I'm not really sure. If he was fighting a guy that wasn't as physically as strong as Impa, I believe he can just keep going for those takedowns first, second, third round. But a guy like Impa who has that size, he's a strong welterweight. He can wrestle himself. He can power out of moves as well. And in my opinion, he definitely has a striking advantage. He has a steady jab. He's able to pick up points. He's the more technical striker of these two. But I'm going to go Impa, man. I think he can keep this on the feet. Even if he goes down first round, I'm hoping he survives that round because I don't think Carlston can keep that pace second, third round. I think Impa's going to be able to stuff some of these takedowns and keep it on the feet and win a decision or even a knockout. So Impa is my pick to get this done.
Not mad at that. That was definitely one of the few fights I was going back and forth on. So I can definitely see why Impa would be the pick there. Let's move on to fight number 4. Erin Blanchfield taking on Sarah Alpar. I'll get one more of them out first on my end, starting with Erin Blanchfield. UFC debut for her. She's on a 3-fight win streak, but her last time competing was all the way back in July 2020. That was in Invicta. She is introduced in the ring as a BJJ practitioner. She's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, at least at that time in 2020. I don't know what her specific rank is at this point in time. I wouldn't say that she's the best on the feet. She does throw some striking diversity. She does try to use that jab. She does try to use that low kick, a little bit of fakes and feints as well, and different angles to try to get a read on her opponent and get her opponents to bite. She does have some striking IQ, though, to that point. I've seen some good counters come from her. I've seen some decent head movement as well to get out of the way of punches. But I mean, again, the grappling is going to be her strong suit, has a strong body lock, has a solid clinch, has solid takedowns, and of course, very well versed on the ground with her jiu-jitsu ability. For Sarah Alpar, almost a year to the day since her last fight, she lost to Jessica Rose Clark in September 2020. She's actually coming down from 135 to compete in this flyweight fight. She's a southpaw on the feet, a lot of fakes, a lot of feints, definitely throws in combinations, good timing on her takedown attempts. I don't think she has the best takedowns though, so I don't necessarily see that being too much of a threat. I mean, she does land a respectable 2.7 takedowns per fight, but the accuracy is only sitting at 28%. So I don't think she's the best takedown artist. Good in the clinch. She puts her weight on you. She is going to more than likely be the bigger fighter here. Good control against the cage as well. But her biggest thing is that she slows down, at least on the feet, as the fight goes on. I'll keep this prediction short. We see Erin Blanchfield there as the big favorite. This, to me, talent versus toughness type of fight. Blanchfield being the more talented fighter, Alpar being the tougher fighter. And I think talent is going to prevail. So Blanchfield is going to be my pick for this one.
Yeah, I'll make this one quicker. I'm going Blanchfield here to get this done. I just think that in every area of the fight, she could hold her own in. And I just think that advantage on the ground, her cardio, she's coming in here on a roll. Like the UFC wants her to win. They gave her a fighter that she can beat. So I'm on the Erin Blanchfield side all day to get this done. So Erin Blanchfield is my pick.
It sounds good. Let's move on to fight number 5. This is a good one here. Montel Jackson taking on JP Buys. Why don't you tell me how you feel about this one?
Man, I think this is a really big mismatch, man. You see these fights in Bellator. You don't really see these type of fights in the UFC. JP Buys, I don't give him a shot here. I think Montel is better everywhere. And I think JP Buys is going to get knocked out at some point, likely in the first round. So easy win, Montel Jackson. I think he can wrestle here if he wants. And I think obviously he has a much, much better striking than JP Buys. So, and he's bigger. So Montel here, I expect him to get this done pretty easily.
Yeah, I'll keep it really short on my end as well. We see Montel Jackson as a very big favorite at minus 550, 5 inches in height, 8 inches in reach. You have JP Buys moving up from 125 up to 135 in this fight. Montel Jackson just a bigger guy. And I think that although I like Buys as a potential prospect, just a really bad matchup for him. To your point, Montel Jackson might even land that KO based on what Bruno Silva was able to do to JP Buys. Plus, again, JP Buys stepping up 10 pounds in weight against a big guy in Montel Jackson. Very bad matchup for him. I don't think I need to break this one down any further. Montel Jackson is going to be my pick for this fight. Let's move on to fight number 6. In that case, we have Nikolas Motta taking on Cameron VanCamp. I'll break this one down. Nikolas Motta, 3-fight winning streak dating back to his Dana White Contender Series win. That was back in November 2020. UFC debut was supposed to happen in May versus Damir Hadzovic, but Motta withdrew at that time due to injury. Pretty patient on the feet, at least early in the fight. He'll use fakes and feints to try to get a read. Fights at a distance, not the most active striker, but he is explosive when he does throw, and he picks up the pace as the fight goes on. So look for him to maybe start round 1, maybe a little bit slow. 8 of his 13 wins, or 8 of his 12 wins, I should say, have come via KO TKO. So you definitely have to respect his power. Has that pop, has the combinations when he does engage. Pretty nasty hook combinations, decently quick jab. And he'll throw the odd high kick here and there. Wouldn't say he's the most diverse striker though. Kind of just sticks to his main punching weapons. For Cameron VanCamp, coming into UFC debut on a 4-fight win streak, I think ESPN has his record completely butchered there, so I'm going to ignore that. His last fight was in July. This is actually the 4th fight of the year for him. Coming down in weight for this fight, he normally fights at 170. And we see this as a lightweight fight at 155. 9 of his 15 wins are via submission. So I think that's really telling in his style. 13 of his 15 wins have ended in a finish in general. Switch stance element to his game on the feet. Not the most technically sound, though. He will show a jab. He will show constant level changes when he does engage. But ultimately, he's actively looking for those takedowns with the level changes. Top control, decent as a grappler, position over to submission type of style. Pretty good at landing submissions, especially good at finding the neck. I'd consider VanCamp a specialist when it comes to his grappling. I wouldn't consider him a threat on the feet, and I don't think he has the best striking IQ or best striking defense. So ultimately, I'm looking at this as a striker versus grappler type of situation, except maybe this is an assumption on my end, but I have to assume that Motta has some grappling ability with him being Brazilian. I also think Motta is a lot better on the feet than VanCamp, in addition to Motta's ability to fight at range and maybe not allow VanCamp to come in. So again, I mean, another close fight on paper. We have to call it for what it is. These are two lower level fighters. So in a lot of ways, you don't know what's going to happen in a lower level fight. But Nikolas Motta is going to be my pick when I'm analyzing these two fighters.
Man, that's a good pick, man. I'm going to make mine quick. I'm going Nikolas Motta as well. He actually, to me, looked really good on the Contender Series. In this fight, I know that his opponent is coming down in weight from 170 down to 155. I just think 155 is a more, the fighters in that division, pound for pound, to me, have a bit more skill than that 170 division. That doesn't mean, obviously, the 155 guy wins, but it just tells me that Motta has fought the better guys, the better skilled guys. And in this fight, I just think Motta's the better fighter here. I think he's going to be able to keep this on the feet, utilize that striking advantage here. And I think he's going to look for a knockout. I think there's going to be a lot of hype on this guy. He looked really good on the Contender Series. If you didn't see the fight, check it out. He had a good win on that. I think he was the underdog as well in that fight. But Motta's my pick here. He's definitely improving every fight. And I just think he's a bit more vicious. And I think he should get this done.
Sounds good. In that case, let's move on to fight number 7. We have Dakota Bush taking on Rong Zhu. How do you feel about this one?
Okay. What I see from Zhu Rong, he's pretty good. He's pretty good striker here. He's pretty solid. He's like a sniper. He has good stand-up. And he wrestles a bit, so he does mix it up. He has a good record, 17-4. But that record is kind of questionable in the WLF. I'm not sure about that organization as far as their credentials go. I haven't really heard of a fighter coming from there that did well. But Dakota Bush, I think Dakota Bush in this fight is going to have the wrestling advantage, the grappling advantage. And I think he can hold his own on the feet. I think he can hold his own. I think he's going to be good on the clinch. This is a tough fight for me because Zhu Rong looks so good when he's striking that. And plus he can mix it up as well. And UFC wants him to win. UFC wants that market in China. So I can see UFC wanting Zhu Rong to win, kind of giving him Dakota Bush to lose. But I just think Dakota Bush has been around. He's been in the LFA. He's fought in good guys. He's been around. LFA is a legit organization to sharpen up your skills. He's fought Bryce Logan, Jaleel Willis, Austin Hubbard. So he's been in there with some really good guys here. His record is not good, 8-3. But I'm going to roll with him. I'm not sure if he's the underdog or the favorite, but I'm going to go with Dakota Bush. I just think he's been around a bit more. He's been in the game. He has the wrestling. He's fought the better guys. I'm hoping he gets it done. I'm going to go with Dakota Bush to get this done.
Vegas is agreeing with you. Dakota Bush is the slight favorite at -125. Rong Zhu is the slight underdog at +105. I'm going to agree with you as well. Dakota Bush is also my pick. One thing I noticed with Dakota Bush is that on the feet, has a pretty good low kick, uses it pretty often. And that calf kick, I think, is going to work really well for him in this fight. We saw Rodrigo Vargas use it sparingly, but effectively versus Rong Zhu. I do think either fighter can land on the other. So in some ways, that could determine this fight. To your point, Rong Zhu has pretty solid looking striking, but ultimately I do think Bush actually offers a bit more diversity on the feet. I think he's a bit more explosive. I think he's likely to be the one pushing the pace, or the one that's just striking first in general. And I think that's going to allow him to get the W in this fight, in addition to the wrestling that you mentioned. So Dakota Bush will be my pick for this fight as well. Let's move on to fight number 8. Fight number 8, we have a tough one here. Women's bantamweight fight. I believe 2 top 10 bantamweights, if I'm not mistaken. We have Pannie Kianzad taking on Raquel Pennington. Pannie Kianzad, she's on a 4-fight win streak. She had a unanimous decision win versus Alexis Davis back in June. Good stand-up, fluid stand-up, good boxing, keeps range, mixes in the kicks as well. really likes that hook, whether it's as a counter punch or whether she uses it to close distance. Solid takedown defense, at least on paper. She has 78% takedown defense in 5 UFC fights. Solid tie clinch, knees, decent clinch against the cage as well. Physically strong. Even though she may not look it, she is very physically strong. She can exit those clinches with dangerous strikes as well. Of course, she's going up against Raquel Pennington, who is definitely physically strong. She beat Marion Renault back in June of last year. Don't be too alarmed by her record. We see her there at 11-9, but ultimately she's faced the best women in the sport. Holly Holm, Aldana, Durandamy, Nunes, Tate, Correa, Andrade, the list goes on. So I'm not too mad at her record versus her ability. Toughness is probably her biggest strength. I do look for her to control the center of the octagon more times than not. And she probably most closely identifies as a boxer on the feet, primarily hands. She has a decent jab, decent striking defense as well. And like I said, very physically strong, especially when she gets you against the cage, has a bit of a tie clinch in her own right as well. This one's hard to call because, again, it could be one of those talent versus toughness type of matchups. And in a lot of ways, Pennington has that toughness to pull through. But I like the streak that Pannie Kianzad is on. I do think she is technically better. I do think she is faster. I do think she's going to use her movement to her advantage as well. And although she may not be as strong as Raquel Pennington, I feel like she can potentially match her in that sort of strength or toughness situation or clinch situations against the cage. So I'm looking for Pannie Kianzad to continue the streak that she's on. She's going to be my pick. She's an underdog as well at plus 115. But I'm going with Pannie Kianzad.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'll make mine quick, man. After you saw Pannie versus Sijara Eubanks, you can kind of get an idea how she's going to handle someone that tries to rough her up. And Eubanks is really good with the grappling in that division. Striking wise, I think Pannie Kianzad's the better striker. I think when they're at range, she can be able to pick up a lot of points. Raquel has that dog in her, so she can definitely hold her against the cage. Keep it close, but I just think that after that fight versus Sijara Eubanks, I just think Pannie Kianzad's ready, and I just think that again, it's her time right now. She's on a 4-5 winning streak. Raquel Pennington, she won versus Marion Renault, but it wasn't really an impressive win. It was holding her against the cage type of win. But I'm going to go Pannie Kianzad. I think she has more right now at this point, and I think at this stage she's the better fighter. So Pannie Kianzad, I expect to get it done.
Sounds good. And we are now moving on to our final fight of the prelims. We have Mike Slow Rodriguez taking on Tafon and Nchukwi. How do you feel about this one?
Okay, this is a hard fight, man, because how I look at it is I really think that Rodriguez is the better striker. I think he's the more skilled guy. I think this fight's going to stay on the feet. I think he's the guy with more talent. But Tafon, one shot can put his lights out, right? So it's a hard fight because it's not like Rodriguez can go shoot for a takedown if ever he gets rocked or if ever he's in trouble from the power. So it lets me think that Tafon is live in this fight here just to land that shot and finish him, knock him out, because I think he's a more durable guy. I know Tafon's moving up in weight here, though. So he's going to be fighting a bigger guy, a longer guy. I'm going to go with the more skilled guy. Again, this is a tough fight for me. I'm not going to make a bet on this. But I'm going to go Rodriguez here. I just think that he's the better fighter. But obviously, when you're dealing with light heavyweights, durability is a lot of times a big issue. And I think Tafon is more durable. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tafon hits that chin. But until he hits the chin, I see him losing the fight. He's going to be losing the fight, and then one shot, fight's over, right? So I'm going to go Rodriguez here, stay out of danger, win the fight, knockout decision.
With this fight, what's interesting for me is that, I do think Nchukwi is stronger physically. I know he's moving up to light heavyweight, but he has spent some time there. Whereas, of course, the last couple of fights were at middleweight, but he's back at light heavyweight. He's been there before, so I don't think that's unfamiliar territory for him. And the thing with Mike Rodriguez, he's not reliable to me, right? I don't really feel threatened by Mike Rodriguez. I don't feel he has a threatening style of stand-up. We know he has that, for lack of better word, John Jones type of stand-up, We know he's a southpaw. We know, we know that he's a Muay Thai kickboxer, I should say. Southpaw, again, has that John Jones type of style, boxing, push kicks, front kicks, good distance control, good striking defense, elbows, knees, things like that. But with Tafon Nchukwi, I feel like he might just be technically better as a striker. I feel like he has good striking defense. I feel like he's a decent counter puncher. I feel like he's going to put combinations and punches and combinations when he's in range. I think he's likely to control the center of the octagon in this fight. Not the best at cutting off the ring. I do notice that he follows his opponents. And I mean, to your point with the cardio, I'm pretty satisfied with the cardio tank that he has. When I think about him on the feet, again, good boxing stance, good boxing movement, good distance control, gets out of the way of punches. He's going to mix in those kicks sporadically. Let's not forget, he's also kickboxing world champion, 13-1 as a Muay Thai fighter as well. So I think this is going to be the type of fight that he is actually looking for. Whereas Mike Rodriguez is going to look like potentially the more skilled fighter. I think Tafon Nchukwi probably actually is the more skilled fighter. So I'm looking for Nchukwi to get it done, whether it's closing distance and being effective for at least 2 rounds, or whether it's potentially putting Mike Rodriguez out. Tafon Nchukwi is going to be my pick in this fight. So let's move on to Vegas. We have a lot of fights on that prelim card, 9 of them in total to choose from. In terms of underdog picks, who are we considering?
Is Pannie Kianzad an underdog?
She is, yep.
Yeah, that's my underdog pick.
Sounds good. So I have a few underdog picks on my end. Pannie Kianzad is one of them. Another potential underdog I'm looking at is Carlston Harris. I'm also taking a look at Gustavo Lopez, and I'm also taking a look at Hannah Goldy. These are all fighters that are right around plus 100. So again, it tells you how close the fights are on this card. But I have 4 potential underdogs I'm taking a look at, and I do want to see how the remainder of the week plays out. In terms of favorite picks, who are you looking at?
Favorite picks, I'm going to be looking at Impa Kasanganai. I'm also looking at Erin Blanchfield and Montel Jackson.
Blanchfield, Montel Jackson. So we have 3 fights there. 3 fights for a plus 172. $100 will return $272. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return $680. For my favorite pick, I mean, we definitely want to include Montel Jackson in there because I do feel really good about him as well. But I'll keep it at just 2 fights. And the second fight that I'm going to include is, let's see, where is it here? I'm actually going to put Tafon Nchukwi on there. I just can't rely on Mike Rodriguez at all. So Tafon Nchukwi, Montel Jackson, plus 112 together. $100 will return $212, and for our bigger bettors, $250 will return $531. So let's sign off on that note. As usual, subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit the notification bell so you know when we come out with our prediction videos. And of course, make sure you tune into the main card prediction video as well. And make sure you comment. We definitely appreciate the comments. Let us know how you feel about our picks. Let us know which parlays you are potentially taking a look at. And we'll be more than happy to provide our individual feedback on your specific parlay. But in the meantime, we are going to sign off. This has been the UFC Vegas 37, aka UFC Fight Night, Smith versus Spann prelim card predictions. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks. And as usual, let's get this money.
Let's do it.